Welcome back to Artists, Engineers, and Entrepreneurs here from Hiller Measurements. Today is special for two reasons. Today's show, we're coming to you from a new field. This is our new manufacturing plant. We open in 2 weeks. We're really excited to welcome all of you, our viewers, if you come to visit us, to show what is a tripling in our size and a quadrupling in our capacity as Hiller continues to grow. Our second surprise today is to introduce you to a very respected guest that we're so honored to have. Today on AE Squared, we are happy to have from Texas District 25, our own Congressman Roger Williams.
Good to be here.
Good to be here. Let me brag on you for just a second. You mind?
Make it quick.
I'm going to be quick. All right. So for those of you who need to be in the know, so Congressman Williams, he was elected to Congress in 2012, representing the 25th District. Now, just so you know, the 25th District, that goes from just south of downtown Fort Worth, yeah?
Yeah.
And it goes down west of Waco and then comes down in part of Austin and most of Hays County. Now, prior to being elected to Congress, you were the Secretary of State for the state of Texas under Governor Rick Perry.
Right.
And that was a time of phenomenal economic growth
A lot of
for our
growth,
state.
and that's what we, Governor Perry and I traveled all over the country bringing jobs to Texas and bringing business to Texas, and rightly so.
You succeeded.
We did.
You continue to.
Yes, sir.
Here I am.
There you go.
So, now this session of Congress, he serves both on two subcommittees. He's on the Consumer Protection and Financial Institutions subcommittee, and the subcommittee on National Security, International Development, and Monetary Policy. And that's within the Financial Services
Services Committee.
I got that right? That's a mouthful.
Yeah, you did it too. That's good.
Well, listen, I need to not talk and let our viewers listen to you. So can you fill us in on what's happening in Washington, D.C. that perhaps we don't know, and what's good happening in our district?
Well, there's a lot happening, really. But first of all, I want to congratulate you on this facility. This is fabulous. And I think it's just an example of how great our country is, the opportunity, maybe start with not much, you end up with something and create jobs. So thanks for what you're doing.
No, thank you.
It's a unique time in Washington, and we've got a really good congressional district, one I'm honored to represent it. I tell people it's a little unique when you think about what's in our district. It's kind of what the forefathers saw when they talked about Congress people representing a slice of America. We represent all of you. We have Comanche Peak Nuclear Plant. We have Fort Hood. We have the University of Texas. We got Tarleton State University. We got the largest population of dairy farmers anywhere in the state of Texas or in our district. We got all these things, different uniqueness represented, and it's a pretty neat district to represent. It's very unique, and you all have a big part in it. But what's going on in Washington? That's a great question. What a challenging time we're all in, right? Many of us never have ever thought we'd see some of the things we see today. But the great thing about today is that our economy is still really good. If we were sitting here talking in January, we'd be talking about what? More jobs than people, 3.5% unemployment, 4% GDP, and that was
the best of times. The
best of times, and that was in January, and here we are now. But even though we've taken a sucker punch with Corona, which has been very serious, and still an issue, needless to say, but we've taken this sucker punch, and we still are here with a pretty good economy. I mean, you look at, we have the lowest interest rates right now any of us have ever seen, many cases in the world. We got the lowest tax rates.
Right.
I've been in business 50 years. Tax rates were never this low. Our lending institutions, our credit unions, our banks, they have money. And look at the stock market. I haven't seen it today, but yesterday was 28,000.
Isn't that incredible?
The economy is good. What we got to do, the last component is we've got to get people back to work again. You all are hiring, and my business, we're hiring, but we've got to get people back to work. We already see that happening. Unemployment benefits ended July 30th. We're starting to see unemployment go down again. We're seeing more jobs and more hires than we've ever had before. So what I'm getting at is the economy is really good, and I think that we stand here in the next next couple of months, we could see fourth quarter growth, and I think next year could be a huge year. So we got a lot to be thankful for. With all that being said, what we have going on in Washington right now, I'm concerned about. We don't need to be passing any more regulations. We need to turn the economy over to Main Street. I'd like to see Main Street do the cash flowing of America and let government, us in Congress, get serious about the debt, begin to cut the debt, and create net worth back in America. I think that's the way That's the way it should go. So we want to make sure that we keep the economy open, we keep doing what we're doing, and we're positive about this. We're positive about where our country is heading, because we have good opportunities here. Now, with all that being said, I don't think we can get our economy back to where it's full force until we can protect small businesses, big businesses, my business, your business, from liability issues on Corona. A lot of businesses are very concerned about growing their business, about hiring people, because they're just not sure where we are in Corona. If somebody gets Corona at your business or whatever, can they be sued out of business?
The rules are changing.
The rules are changing, and you know, your insurance you cover in a business doesn't cover pandemics. So that's a big deal to me. I want to see where we can offer liability protection for businesses, so you can be in business, not be sued out of business. That's important. The other thing is, we talk about a second path on. You know, people will ask me, where are we going on phase 2 of CARES? Well, the PPP program worked, as I said, but we still have $130 billion in that program that we haven't used, that ended August 8th. We've got to find a way to use it. I'm not one of those that says, let's add another. I don't want to see us add another $2 trillion, $1.5 trillion. You know, debt is an issue, but we got $130 billion still in the program. So what I'd like to see for CARES 2 or whatever is, let's use $130 billion. Let's come up with liability protection for businesses, okay? And say, Main Street, go get them. And that's what I believe, and and you all are a prime example of growing your business. Many cases, if regulations would be lifted, you could grow it even more. So that's kind of where what we're talking about. And you know, I mean, not to get too deep in this, but you know, last week we were talking about the post office. Now we're talking about other issues. We just go back and forth. Not much is going to happen between now and the election. It's just the way it is. There is an election. I think most of your listeners know there is an election, but not much is going to happen because it's all politics right now. But we do have an issue coming up September 30th, I think. The government runs out of money. Now, this is not something you can do or states can do or whatever. We have balanced budgets. We do those kind of things, but we don't in the federal government. So the state runs out of money on September 30th. Then we've got to decide, we're going to keep the government open, don't keep the government open, this and that. That may be a time that that maybe we look at passing another phase 2 like I'm talking about. I don't know, but that's going to be the next thing that we talk about, and then get on with the election and so forth. So all that being said, America is still the greatest country in the world. America is going through a lot right now. In many cases, like I said, first time ever. But this is still the greatest country in the world. The greatest opportunities are in this country, where people can start with nothing and end up with something.
Agreed.
And as I tell people, you don't watch the news at night, and you don't see people getting in a boat and heading out. They come in.
It's still coming in.
And the Statue of Liberty, if you look at it, it faces out, it does not face in. So when people want to talk about this country, it's this, it's that, I will challenge them every single day, 24/7. As bad as we may be at times, this is still the greatest country in the world. And it's great because we have the ability for people to take risk and get reward. Capitalism, the greatest system there is in the world. We believe in individuals more than the federal government. We believe in less government, not big government. I want government to do 3 things: collect my taxes, defend my borders, and help me with infrastructure, and get out of my life.
Get out of the way.
And drill down to local levels and let the people in their local levels decide, what do you want your schools to be like? What do you want your homes to be like? What you know, local control, that sort of thing. We need to get back to that. We will get back to it. But regardless of what party anybody's on, what persuasion they may be, we all have to agree at the end of the day, this is the greatest country in the world, and we are blessed to live here.
That's an opinion worth defending as well, vehemently. More of that's needed. Well, I hope you don't mind, but as a kind of a change for how we have run AE Squared, we wanted to have a town hall and bring our entire staff in so that they could meet you and get asked questions. But we had 2 challenges with that. One's COVID, and the other thing is I wanted to show off our new facility. So instead, we've asked 4 of our employees who had questions to share them. And so I hope you don't mind if I, on their behalf, ask a few questions of you that come from our people and our audience. You'll get to meet them as well along the way. So let's see what they have to say and see what.
If they're too hard, I'm going to defer to you.
Well, now you put me on the spot here. Okay, so Brandon in planning. Okay, so this is one of our managers asked. As we look beyond the next election, what should Texas small business owners and their employees expect from Congress other than what we've seen so far?
That's a great question, and I would hope, regardless of which side wins in November, that the people see Congress able to get something done.
Right.
And there's a lot more, Brandon, in Congress that we agree on than we don't agree on. But if I was president, I would gather the other side together and say, here's what we agree on. Let's agree on it. Go have a press conference and talk about it. We'll worry about this other stuff. But we're too busy in making sure right now the other person doesn't get credit for something.
Right.
And Ronald Reagan said, it doesn't matter who gets the credit as long as you get it done. And all of you in business, in your company, we don't worry about credit. Let's get results.
Agreed.
And I want us to get more result-oriented in Congress to where we can agree to disagree, find the issues we agree on and promote those, but create an economic environment that empowers individuals to do great things and not empower the government. I hope we can talk about that once this election is over with and that sort of thing. Because in my mind, less government is still the best government. And I think most people will agree with that. You know, you walk down the street anywhere in America and you say to somebody, are you average? Nobody's going to say they're average.
No.
We don't believe that. We're not an average
That's a
nation.
great point.
And there's no reason to try to make people average.
Right.
And so forth. So I hope coming into the new Congress, which will be the 117th Congress, that we can agree to disagree, not be angry, not be driven by anger and hate and dislike, but be driven by what we agree on and get that done.
We don't have enough time on the show for this, but I'd love to have a conversation with you about the mechanics of making that happen.
Yeah.
There certainly are forces that seem to want to run counter to that. I know, as you mentioned that there's more that you agree than you disagree. Quite honestly, that comes as somewhat of a surprise, regardless of which channel you watch.
Oh, I know, because it's all hidden.
Right.
It's a hidden thing.
Right.
And if people would just agree to disagree and not be driven by hate and anger, a lot could happen. But if you do watch the media, the medias have different ideas and what's going on, and it would be hard to see. But there are look at, just pick one thing, for example, infrastructure. Okay, we all agree that we need better highways, we need better bridges, we need internet. We all agree with that. Well, why don't we start with that?
Yeah.
And let's build the best highways. Let's build the strongest bridges. Let's build the quickest internet structure. Let's do all that. We agree to it. Find a way to fund it.
Right.
Make it happen. But we don't talk about that now. And that's something I would jump on in a minute after this election, is infrastructure.
I'll look forward to the sequel with
Airports and ports.
Oh.
Our ports need dredging. We got the biggest ships in the world trying to get through the Panama Canal. In many cases, they can't get to us because our ports aren't deep enough. That's just
Really?
People don't think about that. The trade that comes with it, the jobs that come with it.
Next question. We could spend a long time on that one. So Mike in production, one of our great technicians, has asked, Congressman, assuming the pandemic continues and lasts for a year or more still, hope not, but let's assume for a second it does, what advice would you give young people coming out of high school and college as they attempt to enter the workforce? Would it be better for them to just stay in school?
Well, that's a great question. I would say on the pandemic, which there's no book on the pandemic.
Correct.
We're writing the book, all of us. I think that we need to be more aware than afraid of the pandemic. And I would not let the pandemic drive your future.
Right.
I would say, you know, school is great, get an education, but there's a point in time to use that education, put it to work, because we need it in the country. We need you working. We need you creating capital. We need you creating jobs. You can't do that when you're in school.
Right.
And you know, and the government can't do that either. The government can create a job, but the government can't create net worth.
Right.
And so we need you at what level you're going to get your degree. And get out of school, use that, hire people, and don't be afraid of the virus, be aware of the virus. Look, it's not going to last forever. This is too great a country. You go back into history, we've had things like this happen. And each time we've come out of it. You know, you know history, I mean, but we came out of 9/11. We won World War II. We can do this stuff. So we need you out there working. Get your degree, put it to work.
Would you imagine that it would be also, as a follow-on, It seems like in a time of supported crisis, that is also the time of greatest opportunity. One would hope if there is a conundrum about whether you can find a job, perhaps the best answer isn't to go back to school, it's to find a good mentor and start a business.
Well, exactly. And my father used to tell me, if you're under 30, find a friend over 50, because they'll give you wisdom. And if you're over 50, find a friend under 30, they'll give you energy.
Yeah, it's a great point.
And how true that is. So you got to get there, start a business. And the thing about it is, anytime there's been an event in America or in the world history, for every action, there's a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the job that you had, maybe they've sent you home, or they've laid you off, or they've cut your hours back.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great time to start your own business.
Correct.
There's capital in the system, which wasn't there in '08, for example.
Right.
There's capital in the system. There's opportunities out there. And so use this. You know, before this happened, nobody knew what a 3-ply was.
Mm-hmm.
Now we all know. And you know what? There's people that didn't know that then, but they know that now because they've started businesses and they're selling, and they're making money. And they're creating capital, and they're creating jobs. That's how America works.
Right.
Because this is still the greatest economy in the world. As I said earlier, there's money in the system. There's low interest rates. There's low tax rates when you make money to keep more money and invest. And you can get paid by the government now to invest. You buy a piece of equipment, you can expense it 100% if you want to. Great
Thank you very
opportunities.
much for that.
You
We're going
got
to
it.
fill this building up shortly. So, okay, here's this. Okay, Teresa, she's in accounting. This is an accounting question. You'll like this one. Congressman, how effective do you think, and you touched on this before, how effective do you think the Paycheck Protection Program has actually been for small businesses so far?
Well, it's been great.
Right.
So in District 25, which you talked about,
Yes.
right? South Fort Worth to right
Off-
through here.
yeah.
To Wimberley.
Wimberley, right.
58, we've accounted for 58,000 jobs been saved from PPP. Think of that.
Yep.
58,000 jobs, and those jobs support how many, 2 or 3 people maybe on top of that.
Yeah.
So that in just this district, and 6,000 businesses. And so it's worked.
Right.
Now, I'm concerned about anything we spend because we don't have the cash in the bank.
Right.
We have to borrow it. That's the reason our debt is high. I'm worried about the debt. I'm worried about if interest ever gets any higher. A lot of that could lock into your, could go into interest instead of growth.
Right.
Right. But we had to do this. We had to do it. But now it's time for the federal government to get out of the business and let the private sector use the capital they got and grow their business. And so I think the PPP program was good. We have this extra money that's still in there. We needed to define who should get that. And then, but it was, and I'll tell you too about this, and I think all of us should thank our lenders, our credit unions, our
Agreed.
bankers. I don't know of another country in the world that has a financial system that could have pushed this amount of money through in 2 weeks, like our banking system did.
What did I hear? It was like 8 months of typical loan applications processed in 3 days.
No, but there's no system in the world that could have done what our banking system did. All right. And we need to be understand. That shows you how great the country is in a time of turmoil.
Right.
I mean, I know bankers stayed there till many hours after midnight processing these loans so small business could have them, so they didn't have to lay people off. They stepped up. And so the PPP program worked. It does not need to be part of our economy because we have to earn our way through this, but it came at a good time. And we're seeing through it too that by letting the private sector have this capital, the federal government is seeing return on investment. Yeah. You're seeing return on investment because you're saving taxpayers. You're generating income again. So there is return on investment on PPP. And I was glad I voted for it. I thought it was a great program, and the idea of pushing it out as quick as it did is pretty cool.
As a small business owner, I sure hope the follow-on to this is that we let Art Laffer's wisdom reign, and you let us, let our growth address the debt as opposed to a short-term tax increase.
Well, you can't create taxes. Let me tell you how you create cash flow in the government. You create cash flow by cutting taxes. You cut taxes, you create more taxpayers. That's what we saw in 2016 with the greatest tax cut the country's ever seen.
Correct.
Is, as we said earlier, more jobs and people. Okay, so you don't raise taxes, okay, and expect to sell more.
Right.
If you're not selling enough, you cut prices and you cut expenses, or you do like every mom and dad does, and grandpa and grandma. If you're $1,000 in the hole this month, you cut $1,000. You don't go borrow $1,000.
Right.
So the Laffer curve and all that is right. I back it, but it's simple.
Yep.
If you want to create cash flow, you cut taxes. If you want to stop the economy, you raise taxes because you reduce taxpayers, you reduce customers that are coming to buy your product.
Right. It seems indefensible
Well,
how you could deny that logic.
well, exactly. But it's a debate we've always had in Washington, and
in
you know,
universities.
in universities. And the bottom line is, you need to ask yourself, who's better to handle your assets, the federal government or you? Most people will say, I am,
Yes.
not them.
Right.
And that's why we get back to the three things we need to have the government do and get out of our life.
Last question. And this comes from and I forgot to announce, former baseball coach and player from TCU.
Right. Always looked fastball.
Always very good. And coach, and you
TCU.
coordinate the Congressional Baseball
Right.
League. This comes from Mike, who's one of our engineers, a new grad, fresh from TCU.
Oh, good. Well, he's going to ask a hard question then.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Pretty smart guy.
Congressman, well, he says you went from business ownership to politics. That's not true. You are one of the few that are still an owner as well as a politician, yeah?
Right. One of the problems we have in Washington is we have people that have made this a career.
Right.
Politics and serving in Congress is not supposed to ever be a career.
Right.
In the beginning days, we knew that they had a hard time getting people to go to Washington because they had to plow the fields.
Right.
Now you can't get them out of
leave.
Washington, and that's a real problem. And I didn't used to support term limits, but I support term limits now because it's just not supposed to be a career.
Right.
And I do still have a business. I couldn't have run for Congress if I didn't have a business. I have a family business we've had since 1939.
Right.
So I'm unique on both sides. I still own a business and employ people. And the legislation I vote for or against, I'm living with, just like Main Street America's living with.
Right.
Okay. So I do think that public service is the most noble calling of all. And President Bush 41 reminded us that always. And so this is public service for me. And it's not a career. And the problem we have in D.C. is that you make two decisions and two votes only when you begin to vote. One vote is just make a vote to save your political future, or you can make a vote to save America's future. Now, if you're up there as a career, you make a vote to save your future. It's not my career. I think I'm making votes to save America's future.
Right.
And I really believe everybody, and this will never happen, this is make-believe, okay? But wouldn't it be great if everybody that served in Congress that represented 350 million people had at least, I don't know, 5 or 10 years in the private sector, where they'd run a business, where they'd signed the front of a check, not the back, where they met the payroll, drew on the line of credit, dealt with an employee that was having problems. Wouldn't that be great?
That would be
because then you have something to fall back on. You take people, there's people up there in leadership in Washington and never got out of Washington. They've been there 50 years. So when they have to fall back on their, what would they do, history, they fall back on what would government do. But when I have to decide what should I do, I fall back on one thing and one thing only. It's what would I do in my business?
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, public service, I think everybody ought to do it from the county, city level right on up. They don't have to run for Congress, but run for mayor, run for judge, run for something. Because we need more people in there now. You know, the truth of the matter is if good people don't do this right now, bad people will. And we need good people to do it. And don't be afraid of what you see. Don't be afraid, well, I don't want my name in the paper. I don't want to get beat up on the internet. It's love of country. It's patriotism. It's what we all should have in our heart to do in some form or fashion. So I didn't give up my business to do this. I have my business. I do this. This is temporary. My business is permanent.
So last question, and this is probably off of Mike's a question here. He was asking what drives you to continue in politics. You shared that you support term limits. If term limits ever came together, there would be far more candidates to choose from on each election cycle. If that were the case, and even now, what would be a better logical set of questions to ask when going in to vote of any candidate? You know, oftentimes it seems like we consider candidates based on a soundbite or what the media says, rather than a job interview. And you mentioned something that is so true, which is, wouldn't it be great if they had this experience? What's good experience to prepare somebody for Congress?
Well, I think because if you're in Congress, the way I look at it, see, here's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
You got America.
Right.
That's the holding company.
Okay.
And inside the holding company are 50 small businesses.
Got it.
They're called states. And within those 50 small businesses, there's 300 million customers that are wanting service and wanting return on investment.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've never run a business, you don't understand consumers, you don't understand customer satisfaction, you don't understand competition, you're not going to be a good congressman.
Succeed.
Not going to do it.
Right.
You see? And that's the way I think people should look at it. And I don't care what party you're in, if you choose to get in this business of politics, it's hard.
Yeah.
You know, now don't woe is me, I got it. But you know, we all have stories about it's affected our personal life, our financials, in our family, all that kind of stuff. But it is the most noble calling of all. You should do it and make it happen. So follow your candidate, ask them the questions, ask them the hard questions. I got to be honest with you, the press isn't asking the hard questions.
Yeah.
So we should ask the hard questions. And people like me should be able to answer them.
Well, Congressman, thank you for letting me ask you a few. Your staff, I can tell, is saying you've got more appointments yet for today, so I'm going to let you go. But thank you so much. Anytime you are welcome at Hiller and on the AE Squared stage.
Well, thank you, and congratulations on the business you have and what you mean for our country.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
We'll see you next time right here on AE Squared from Hiller Measurements.
AE Squared is a Hiller Measurements Town Hall production. Copyright 2020. AE Squared is produced by Anthony Longoria. Production support by Christian Zamora. The email address, if you'd like to attend a future taping, is tickets@hillermej.com. Hey friends, thanks for joining us this week on AE Squared. Make sure to subscribe and ring the YouTube bell so you don't miss our next episode with the commander of the U.S. Navy's Test Pilot School, Commander Rory Feely. Rory is also the co-founder of HopFlight, an air mobility company developing a unique electric aircraft design you have got to see. So join me, will you? Next time, right here on AE Squared.